evening. 21st regular meeting of the Medford City Council, May 25th, 2021. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Council Bears.
Present.
Council Falco.
Present.
Vice President Knight. Present. Council Marks.
Present.
Council Morrell.
Present.
Council Scarpelli. Present. President Carriello.
Yes, present. Please rise and salute the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Chapter 38, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order, imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Medford City Council will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information, the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and private parties with a right or requirement to attend this meeting can be found at the City of Medford website at www.medford.org. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen, watch the meeting may do so by accessing the meeting link contained herein. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we're able to do so, despite our best efforts, we will post on the City of Medford or the Medford Community Media website an audio or video recording transcript or other comprehensive record of the proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Okay. 21344, City of Medford, a public hearing via Zoom remote video conference on Tuesday evening, May 25th, 2027, on a petition from Eric Shakes of Chicken and Shakes Automotive, 78 Swan Street, Medford, for a Class 2 used auto sales special permit in accordance with Chapter 94 zoning ordinance of the Medford City of Medford, Section 94-148, table of the list of regulation automobile uses 27A for permission to operate its Class 2 secondhand motor vehicle sales at 78 Swan Street, Medford, an industrial zoning district. A Zoom link for this meeting will be posted on no later than May 21st, 2021. Petition and plans may be seen in the Office of City Clerk, Medford City Hall, Medford, Mass. Call 781-393-2425 for any accommodations or rates. Okay, this is a public hearing. Mr. Shakes, are you on the call?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, this is a public meeting, a hearing. Is there anyone in favor of this petition? Mr. Shakes, are you in favor of this?
Yes, I am in favor.
Thank you, sir. Is anyone else in favor? Hearing and seeing none, we close that part of the meeting. Is there anyone in opposition to this public hearing? Hearing and seeing none, we close that part of the meeting. Mr. Shakes, name and address for the record. If you can give us a little brief explanation on what you're doing with this license.
Yeah, we plan to buy and sell used cars and pretty much anything that's involved with that.
Licensing is Councilor Scarpelli. Councilor Scarpelli.
Mr. Shakes, could you explain how many cars will be on the lot?
How many cars will be on the lot?
Yeah.
8.
Okay.
Yeah, 8.
So is this also a service station?
No, we're not a service station. We have an automotive body shop.
Okay, right.
Yes, sir.
And I do see all the paperwork's in order, Mr. President. Wait for any questions for my fellow councils.
Do any councilors have any questions for Mr. Shakes? Okay, Councilor Scarpelli, I don't see any hands up, so.
Move approval, Mr. President.
And on the motion for approval by Councilor Scarpelli, seconded by Councilor Bears. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Council Bears.
Yes.
Council Falco.
Yes.
Vice President Knight.
Yes.
Council Marks. Yes. Council Morrell.
Yes.
Council Scarpelli. Yes. President Caraviallo.
Yes, 7 in the affirmative, motion passes. Good luck on your new operation, sir.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Yes, sir. Too.
Legal notice 21370, petition for a grant of location, National Grid, North Andover, Massachusetts. Location of underground electric conduits, Medford, Massachusetts City Clerk's Office. You are hereby notified by order of Medford City Council that the Medford City Council will hold a public hearing via Zoom on Tuesday, May 25th. A link to be posted no later than Friday, May 21st, on a petition of Massachusetts Electrical Company doing business as National Grid for permission to construct a lone underground electric conduit, including the necessary and sustaining and protecting fixtures under and across the public ways here named said underground electric conduit to be located substantially in accordance with the plan marked Boston Avenue, Medford, Mass, and filed in the city office of the city clerk. Wherefore it prays that after due notice and hearing as provided law, it be granted the location permission to excavate the public highways and run and maintain underground electric conduits together with such sustaining protecting fixtures as it may find necessary for the transmission of electricity. Said underground conduits to be located substantially in accordance with the plan filed herewith marked Boston Avenue, Medford, Mass, and available for inspection in the office of the city clerk, Medford City Hall, room 105, 85 George P. Hester Drive, Medford, Mass. 02155. The following are the streets and highways referred to. Plan number 302-78888, Boston Avenue. National Grid to install beginning at the point of approximately 200 feet northwest of the center line of the intersection of Boston Ave and College Ave and continuing approximately 65 feet in the northeast direction. Install 2 to 3 inch secondary duct from the existing pole number 3310-5, 65 feet northeast towards 468 Boston Avenue, the MBT yard. Location approximately as shown on a plan filed in the office of the city clerk. Approved by the chief engineer with the following conditions. The engineering division recommends that this grant of a location be approved with the following conditions. 1, the grant of the location is limited to 65 feet of duct bank as described in the GOL document as follows. National Grid to install beginning at a point approximately 200 feet northwest of the center line of the intersection of Boston Avenue and College Ave and continuing approximately 65 feet in the northeast direction. Install 2 to 3 feet of secondary duct from existing pole 3310-5, 65 feet northeast toward 468 Boston Ave, MBTA yard. Before starting work, the contractor shall notify DigSafe and shall obtain all applicable permits from the engineering division. The project must obtain a street opening permit pursuant to section 74-141 of the city ordinances prior to commencing work. 3, no other utility structures, conduits, duct banks, pipes, or any other apparatuses are adversely impacted. National Grid shall ensure that all sewer, water, and drain lines are marked prior to any excavation. Number 4, the plan included with the petition does not include existing utilities. The street opening permit application must include an engineered plan showing existing utilities. The street opening permit application must also include a copy of the MWRA 8M permit. Number 5, roadway surface restoration must be coordinated with the Green Line Extension Project. At a minimum, final surface restoration northerly offset limits shall line and abut final surface restoration resulting from Green Line Extension utility work. If possible, the final restoration should be coordinated to minimize seams. The southerly offset must be also coordinated with the Green Line Extension Project and be a minimum of 10 feet. The final restoration plan must be approved by the engineering division. Number 6, sidewalk surface restoration must be coordinated with the Green Line Extension Project. At a minimum, final sidewalk restoration on the eastern side of Boston Avenue should include new cement concrete and vertical granite curbing. The existing concrete barrier should not be replaced. The final restoration plan must be approved by the engineering division. Number 7, pavement markings must be restored. Temporary markings must be painted during the interim period between trench patch and final restoration. Number 8, the project site must be swept daily and shall be kept free of debris for the duration of the installation. Approved by the superintendent of wires. Okay. Plans can be viewed in the city clerk's office, 781-393-2425. Do we have somebody from National Grid on the call here?
Yes, good evening. My name is Socrates. My address is 170 Medford Street in Malden.
Okay, and where this is a hearing for a grant of location. Sorry?
Yes,
I'm sorry, can we get your last name again?
sure. Socrates Perez.
Okay. Okay, so Mr. Socrates, are you, with this public hearing, are you in favor of this project?
Yes, I am.
Is there anyone else in favor of this project? Hearing and seeing none, we close this portion of the hearing. Is there anyone here in opposition to this project? Hearing and seeing none, we close this section of the hearing. So, Mr. Socrates, if you can give us a brief description of what's going on this project.
Sure. This project is for the MBTA. We are petitioning to install 2 3-inch conduit from an existing pole 3310-5 and running towards 468, approximately 65 feet. And then after that will be an MBTA's property.
Okay, do anyone have any questions for National Grid? Councilor Morel?
Thank you, Mr. President. So is there anticipated traffic impact or pedestrian impact while this project is going on?
Say that again, sorry.
Is there anticipated either traffic or pedestrian impact while this project is going on? Will people have to be diverted at all while this work is happening?
That will be, yeah, the contractor will be doing all that.
I'm sorry?
The contractor will be handling all that.
Okay. Timing wise, since the other grant of location we have is kind of diagonally across the street, are these being timed together? Do you know, as far as the intention of when to do the work? I know there's still some requirements from our city engineer, but I'm curious the desired timing as far as the work of the 2 projects.
I'm not sure on that one though. I can find that out.
Okay, that's all I have right now. Thank you.
Vice President Knight?
Mr. President, thank you very much. I certainly don't have any problem with this petition that's before us this evening. If you drive through that area and that intersection in particular, I do believe there are already 3 projects that are underway. We have the Green Line Extension Project, we have the Cummings Center Project, and I do also believe we have issued a grant of location for underground utility work coming from the train tracks on the southern side or the western side of the intersection of College Ave and Boston Ave as well. So I certainly have no problem with this, Mr. President. I look forward to the day that the Green Line station in South Medford Ball Square opens, and I think that in order for that to happen, we need to let them have electricity. So with that being said, I move approval.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion? Councilor Bears?
I just had a question for the city engineer. Is he on the call?
Jim? Councilor Bears has a question for you?
Yep, I'm here.
Tim, this is under condition 4, it says the plan included with the petition does not include existing utility. That's something that's been addressed.
So in a simple, this is a very simple crossing. I don't know if you recall with the one, that Tufts one, which was more complicated. I requested that plan ahead of time. This is a shallow conduit routing. So I was okay with moving this forward without that detailed plan, but I am requiring a detailed plan for the street opening, just so we have something a little bit more detailed for the utility crossings in the area, including one of MWRA's lines there. So.
Got it. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah.
No, any further discussion? So on the motion by Vice President Knight, seconded by Council Scarpelli for approval. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Council Bears?
Yes.
Council Falco?
Yes.
Vice President Knight?
Yes.
Council Marks? Yes. Council Morel?
Yes.
Council Scarpelli? Yes. President Carriolo?
Yes, 7 in the affirmative, motion passes. Legal notice 21371, petition for grant of location, National Grid, North Andover, Massachusetts. Location of underground conduits, Medford, Massachusetts, City Clerk's Office. You are hereby notified that by order of the Medford City Council, the Medford City Council will hold a public hearing via Zoom on Tuesday, May 25th, 2021. The link to be posted no later than Friday, May 21st, 2021, on a petition of Massachusetts Electric Company doing business as National Grid for permission to construct a loan of underground electric conduits, including the necessary sustaining and protecting fixtures under and across the public way or ways hereafter named. Said underground electric conduits to be located substantially in accordance with the plan marked Boston Avenue, Medford, Mass, filed with the Office of City Clerk. Wherefore, it prays that after due notice and hearing as provided by law, it will be granted a location for permission to excavate the public highways and run and maintain underground electric conduits together with such sustaining and protecting fixtures as it may find necessary for the transmission of electricity. Said underground conduits to be located substantially in accordance with the plan filed here in marked Boston Avenue, Medford, Massachusetts, and available for inspection in the Office of the City Clerk, Medford City Hall, room 103, 85 George P. Hassett Drive, Medford, Massachusetts, 02155. On the motion by Vice
Second.
President Knight to have a brief synopsis by the city engineer, Mr. Tim McGivern. Tim, if you can give a brief synopsis of this? Sorry.
Sure.
Aye.
Second.
Second by Council Scarpelli. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Council Bears,
Yes.
Council Falco,
Yes.
Vice President Knight,
Yes.
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 Yes, 7 in favor, motion passes. Tim McGivern, city engineer, if you can give a brief synopsis of this project.
Yes, I can. I believe this is also a National Grid project similar to the last one. And this is also for one of the Green Line stations. And this is a much shorter run. This is just under a sidewalk from a pole near the site, under the sidewalk to the site. So it's a short run, just of secondary service. So that's about it. So a couple concrete panels in coordination with the Green Line project. I don't even believe they need to go on the roadway. Thank you.
Okay, so where this is a public hearing, Mr. Socrates, this is a public hearing, and those who wish to speak in favor of this may do so.
Yes, I'm in favor, Socrates Perez. I'm in favor.
Thank you. Anyone else in favor of this? Hearing and seeing none, we close this part of the hearing. Is there anyone in opposition to this project? Hearing and seeing none, we close this part of hearing. Okay. Now, do we have any discussion from the council on this?
For the reasons stated previously, Mr. President, move approval.
On the motion by Vice President Knight for
Mr.
approval,
President, one question.
Councilor Scarpelli.
Socrates, I thank you for being here tonight. The question, you said it's going underneath, so this project is going underneath the sidewalk?
Yes, it will
All
be,
right,
yes.
is it existing sidewalk? Will it be replaced with the proper cement forms? Is it hot top there now?
Yes, it will.
So, okay, so do we know if it's cement right now? Is it hot top? I just want to make sure that it's uniformed and that it's left better than when we gave it to you. So I want to make sure of that. You can say yes, no? Is it?
Yes, whatever the material is, cement or concrete or asphalt, we'll replace it in better condition of what it was, to the condition that it was.
Thank you.
Thank you. So on the motion by Vice President Knight, seconded by Councilor Scarpelli. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Council Bears,
Yes.
Council Falco, Vice President Knight,
Yes.
Council Marks,
Yes.
Council Morel,
Yes.
Council Scarpelli, President Carviallo.
Yes. Motion passes.
Motions, orders, and resolutions. Council Paper 21382, offered by President Caraviallo. Be it so resolved that the city completely pave the area of new construction from Woburn Street to Auburn Street, rather than just the new intersections. And be it further resolved, the new island on High Street be discussed in the interest of public safety. Councilor Caraviallo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I don't know if you've, anyone's driven down that section of highway. This is part of the project. 4 blocks, my bike lanes have been twisted by the Brooks School. I think we started this last year. And it's nearing completion. And I don't know if anyone's driven up that way, but they're pretty much done with all the sidewalk bump outs, and the concrete sidewalks have been fixed. But they're planning on just repaving those intersections, which to me is foolish. You've got those 4 blocks, the trucks are there. I don't see why the city just doesn't pay the contractor to pave those, probably maybe 100 yards of paving to at least make that section look uniform. I mean, I think it's harder for them to cut out sections of concrete and put in little patches, and to be more uniform if it's just paved for those 4 blocks. And further, I don't know if anyone's also driven by there. They put an island there on the top of Woburn, right on this intersection of Woburn Street and High. And I don't know if our traffic engineer signed off on that. It's in a very dangerous location. There's no light on it, and anybody coming up during the night is not going to see it. I'm telling you now, that's going to be hit multiple times going forward. It's the same with, we've had the same issue with the one that's in front of the Brooks School. The signs keep coming down, and the other thing that bothers me, we now have another concrete block there. Why couldn't that have been left open with some irrigation, so we could have put some plantings in the middle of it? So at least it would have made it look somewhat better looking than just a hunk of concrete with 4 poles on it and no light or anything. So I would hope that the administration would look forward into having McKay Company at least give them a quote on paving that for the whole 4 block section, and having our traffic engineer review that island in the interest of public safety, Mr. President.
I certainly agree with Mr. President on a motion by Councilor Caraviallo, seconded by Councilor Scarpelli.
Mr. President.
Councilor Marks, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank President Caraviallo for putting this on the agenda tonight. When this issue was presented to the City Council, that was one of the recommendations President Caraviallo just mentioned, was to have the area be paved in totality. So rather than space it from one intersection to another, which didn't make sense, was to have that stretch, which is only maybe a couple hundred yards, 400 or 500 yards, to have it paved curb to curb the entire length. And that would increase the longevity of the construction, the road work itself, and it only made sense, Mr. President. Secondly, this council voted unanimously to continue the bike lane, which starts in front of Brooks School and goes all the way up to the top of High Street. And then where it bends down, it actually stops. And we asked that they continue the bike lane to Winthrop Circle, Mr. President, because there'd be nothing worse than riding your bike there and all of a sudden come up to a decline where you're going to pick up speed and there's no more bike lane. It makes absolutely no sense. So I know we have the city engineer on the line. I'm hoping maybe he can let us know if that is still under consideration, because I believe that was something the city was going to look into. So I would ask maybe if Tim McGivern could give us a response.
The chair recognizes City Engineer Timothy McGivern.
Hi, thank you very much, councilors. So the issue of paving, we are coordinating with MassDOT to pave the whole stretch. So that was a swap out to get more pedestrian friendly lights, so the lights that are going in for the crossings. So we did a trade-off on the budget of the project with the full intention from the beginning of completing the paving. You may have noticed that National Grid has been out there too. So the idea, and the water division as well, replacing lead services. So we're doing our typical prep work for fully paving the road from approximately Auburn, the school, all the way to past Woburn to the next street down, the next street down. So that is the plan. And then in regards to the bike lane, that's also something that we are looking into doing, extending the bike lane striping as discussed previously by this council. And then the safety issue with the island, this is the second time that I've heard about this. We do review plans in my office, and Todd Blake, the traffic engineer, has reviewed these plans. We've been involved through the design of the project. But if there is something that was unanticipated, a safety concern that has arisen, that's a legit concern, then we'll definitely check it out and make sure that any issues are resolved and there's no safety issues out there. So we'll definitely take it seriously for sure. So I can't remember if there was anything else. I think I touched upon everything.
Mr. President?
Council Marks, just to follow up on that, is there anything like that?
I am good, thank you.
Chair
Mr. President, if we can get a report back from Todd Blake on on that island, it's in a very dangerous spot. It's on the crest of the hill. Telling you, people, it's nighttime. Someone's going to be coming up that hill, and they're going to hit that. They're going to hit that because there's no blinking light on it, and they're not going to see it.
We'll take a look.
If he could give us a report on that, and I feel bad for the guy who just put in the new driveway there on the corner of Hastings Lane and High Street, and I don't know how this guy's going to get in and out of his driveway now.
Mr. President?
On the motion of Councilor Caviello, requesting a report back from the traffic engineer on the island at Woburn Street, Hastings Lane along High Street. Does the chair hear a second? Seconded by Councilor Scarpelli. On the motion, Mr. Clerk. Actually, Councilor Falco, I apologize.
No worries. Thank you, Mr. President. And I want to thank Councilor Caviello for bringing this forward, and Councilor Marks had some great questions regarding the bike lane. I remember when this issue came up previously, we were discussing the bike lane, and at that point in time, it was kind of like a bike lane to nowhere. It just stopped. And Mr. McGivern, thank you for your response regarding the bike lane. I was just wondering, you said that you're looking into it, or the department's looking into it. If you could just talk about the process a little bit. Is there going to be a meeting with the traffic engineer? Is there any type of timing on that? Could you elaborate a little bit more?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So, yep. Oh, sorry. Yes, thank you very much, Mr. President. So we're the process begins because we know that obviously we need to pave the whole street. So when you do that, then you talk about striping. So we know that MassDOT has striping scope in the project. So we take a look at where that scope ends. Excuse me, eating peanuts and throat's a little dry. So the resolution was to extend the bike lane down. So when we are preparing for that paving and preparing the striping plan for that, we're going to try to extend it down as far as we can. I think you may recall when this was discussed last time that it's okay if bike lanes, end nowhere. But, the point is taken that it's in a place that maybe if we can extend this all the way to the circle or something further down, we might be able to kind of bring cyclists to a safer, more calmer spot on the road. So factors go into it. So, we're going to measure widths, and we're going to make sure that sight lines are there, and we're going to make sure that we're not creating any problems by putting in new infrastructure, which is the similar design process that, any engineer would go through when you're thinking about these things and laying it out prior to installing it. So we just, I may not sound committing, and that's just because we got to go through, the rigmarole of the engineering judgments and standards to make sure that it's all going to work. But that's what I mean when I say we're considering it, and we know that it's a desire, but we also don't want to do anything that creates a problem. For example, if this island issue is really a problem, we try to foresee as many problems as we possibly can before we install things.
Thank you, Mr. McGivern. And last but not least, what is the estimated completion date of this project?
So the original completion date was August, and then they actually pushed things forward. So they should be done actually within a few weeks here. And then there may be some lag time between completion of the work that's happening now. So the sidewalk works and the patching work, and pulling the forms and all that, and final paving. So that may happen in, July or August.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chair recognizes Councilor Bears.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to Engineer McGivern. Just two quick questions. On the review of the extension of the bike lane, do you have a timeline on how long that will take?
Yes, but before we issue the scope for the striping. So we need to know the answer to that question and where it's gonna land before we hire a contractor to do the paving and the striping. So we're working on that piece now with MassDOT. So doing the calculations for the area, how much is left, what's, and who does what and who pays for what, and kind of splitting that all up. So that's kind of happening right now. So I don't have an exact date for you, but before we tell a contractor to go out and work, we'll have it all worked out.
Great. And then my second question is actually about striping and painting. Is there something included in the plan around striping and painting that may make the island more visible to drivers?
Potentially, this is a new issue for me, so I need to look into it. I'm not sure if there's a retrofit that needs to happen, if a curb needs to move, or if it's something more drastic or severe. So we're gonna have to wait and see, give us a chance to look at it and understand what the issue is. So because it's a safety issue, we're gonna look at it, first thing tomorrow to try to understand what's going on.
Great. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilor Caraviallo.
Thank you, Mr. President. As they're painting the stripes, I know we've asked for the thermoplastic striping multiple occasions. We've always been told because the roads are so bad, we can't have it. Well, we're gonna have a new road there. It would be my suggestion to the DOT to stripe those lines and the crosswalks with the thermoplastic paints, so we won't be doing it every 2 years. And again, like I said, the road's new, everything's new there. There's no reason why they can't do that, and the longevity will be much longer.
Chair, hear a second on the amendment?
Second.
If I can make that a form of motion.
Chair recognizes Councilor Marks.
I know there was some guy in the council that kept on talking about it for many years.
You'd like a report back from the city clerk on that, Councilor Marks?
I stole your thunder.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Zero Summit Road, Mr. Penta.
Robert Penta, Zero Summit Road, former member of this August body. During this past week, I've had two conversations with two separate bus drivers from the MBTA. And their question is, because I can't answer it, so since you do have the city engineer online, they think this is a complete safety hazard, as Councilor Caraviallo and a few of you alluded to, they're having this island that sticks out on the corner of High Street and Woburn. So since we have the city engineer, could he please answer the question, whose idea was to put that island there? And did that island come in as an afterthought to this construction project? Because if that's the case, then I would strongly suggest that you folks recommend that that be removed before someone gets killed there. Can we ask the question, please, to the city engineer?
City Engineer, Mr. McGivern, the chair recognizes City Engineer Timothy McGivern on the question, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. That island has been in the design. The purpose of the island is to allow a place for a pedestrian to have refuge during the crossing, and to shorten the lengths of the crossing through traffic. So it is a pedestrian improvement. So like I said, I was unaware of this potential issue, so we will look into it. Sorry, just some of the things going on. The decision to have that there was a design decision by the designers, and one of the interests of the project was to improve pedestrian safety. So it was considered a positive element in that regard. So, and then it went through full design through MassDOT.
Well, with that being said, Mr. President, going back to what Council Marks and others have alluded to, the bike lane and the taking of property coming up High Street and then getting to that intersection going down the hill, that seems to have bypassed whatever was supposed to be done. And you're asking for something now that this council has already voted on, and there's been a change. I get the impression that this council has not been advised of these changes and the bike route and the island that went there, because it appears that that island, I mean, you're talking about safety, let's talk about the traffic safety before you already have a crosswalk right there at the corner of Hastings Lane going across. And the island comes out a little bit more, it comes over in the area that's pushed out where in front of the other island that's already there, that's going to be gone. But you have to take into consideration in the wintertime, buses coming down the street, heavy duty trucks, ambulances that have to get there. You're looking at a serious vehicular emergency situation that's going to happen there. So I would strongly suggest if that island can be removed, it should be removed. What does the city engineer say
Mr.
about
President,
this?
Mr. President,
The chair recognizes Councilor Marks.
I think what we're hearing, and I hear what Councilor Penta is stating, I think what we're hearing is a commitment from the city engineer and a commitment from the traffic engineer to take a look at this first thing tomorrow. And if they deem it to be a safety concern, then naturally they'll address the safety concern. So I don't want to put anything out there that we have to remove something, or let's leave it to the experts and let's see what they say when they go out and take a look at it.
And I do believe that that was the initial motion that was made by Councilor Caviello and seconded by Councilor Scarpelli. The city engineer take those steps and report back to the council. Is there anybody else that has any questions relative to the issue at hand? Hearing and seeing none. On the let me see here, what do we have? On the motion by, okay, on the First Amendment, made by Councilor Caraviello, seconded by Councilor Scarpelli, that striping be considered in the form of thermoplastic materials. Both coming up over here. So on the motion, on the paper, on the amendment. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll. We'll do the amendments first on the main paper.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. On the amendment for a report back from the city engineer and the traffic engineer relative to safety questions concerning the traffic island at the corner of Winthrop Hastings on High. The main motion made by Councilor Caviello, seconded by Councilor Scarpelli. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes.
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 Yes. On the main motion. Is offered by Councilor Caraviello, seconded by Councilor Scarpelli. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Paper 21383, offered by Councilor Marks. Be it resolved, the city administration requests Eversource, as part of their underground utility project, install new sidewalk and curbing on the even side of Winthrop Street from Wildwood Road to Plaisted Road in the interest of public safety. The chair recognizes Councilor Marks.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I want to thank all my colleagues for their work on behalf of the residents that are impacted by this Eversource project. This project, Mr. President, started in November 2014. That's when initially Eversource presented to the mayor at the time their wishes to install an underground transmission line, roughly 3.2 miles through the heart of the city of Medford, which involved saw cuts, excavation, installation of pipe, backfill, temporary restoration, cable pulling, cable splicing, permanent restoration. And that's not it, Mr. President. Residents in the area for the past little over 2 years have to deal directly with vibration from the construction, with trenching that's being dug, excavating, Mr. President, heavy equipment noise, road plates that cling when you drive over them constantly, dirt and debris in the air from the excavation, additional traffic, fumes, construction noise. And to top it off, as we all heard from residents, countless sleepless nights, Mr. President. We actually had residents that had to go to a hotel because they couldn't sleep, Mr. President. That's how bad this construction got for residents in the area. Now, one would say, well, look, we're getting underground transmission line that's going to benefit the city. There's zero truth to that. Zero. There is zero benefit from this project to the city of Medford. This has zero benefit. It has all the inconvenience and problems, Mr. President. Putting that all aside, over the last 2 years during this construction, and like I said, this process started in 2014 when we started to notify residents of potential hearings and what's going to happen, and they may not be able to get out of their driveway at certain times, and all the other stuff associated with construction that lasts for years, Mr. President. The city, during this process, signed a memorandum of understanding. And I assume it was the mayor at the time. I don't know who else was in the room on behalf of the city. So it was between the city and Eversource. And the memorandum of understanding states that the city of Medford will receive a city field engineer to monitor work activities. So during this process, they were going to pay for someone to monitor the activities. Sounds like a regular construction site to me, Mr. President. So I'm not sure if that was a win for the city, but it was part of the memorandum of understanding. Curb to curb street restoration. So imagine they came in and dug a 3-mile trench and then also put 9 12 by 12 cement vaults along the way. So you can imagine the disruption and the digging and so forth. And they decided that they are going to pave curb to curb when they're done. Isn't that tremendous? They dig up all the street, no benefit to the city, and guess what? We're going to get curb to curb restoration. Yippee, Mr. President. Yippee. You can tell the residents after 2 years of construction in front of their home, they're getting a new street in front. Yippee. Part of the memorandum of understanding. 3 raised crosswalks along the project route and a speed radar trailer for use during construction near Medford High School. For use. They didn't buy it for the city, although we could use one. This is for use during the construction time. How magnanimous of Eversource to provide a temporary speed radar trailer. I don't know why you need it in the area, because they're in such bad condition, the roads, you can't speed anyways. With the metal plates, the dirt, the debris, the tar, anyone that going up and down Winthrop Street can speak for that firsthand, Mr. President. So in addition, the city also signed the following projects. Let me just add, Mr. President, out of the 3.2 miles, Winthrop Street had 6,400 feet, 1.2 miles of road. By far the largest residential construction site for this Eversource project. By far. They were the ones, Mr. President, a lot of people were impacted from traffic, surrounding areas. I understand that, surrounding roads. But they were the ones, Mr. President, that felt the digging, that had the fumes, that had the construction in front of their homes. And what else did they get, Mr. President? The restoration of Winthrop Circle Rotary and High Street sidewalks. Doesn't say how many High Street sidewalks. Then, Mr. President, $50,000 for the installation of 220 linear feet of sidewalk curb ramps from Lorraine Road to Smith Lane. We all know where that little stretch of road is, near the high school, across the street. 220 linear feet. And then rather than continue that, Mr. President, which makes sense, like we were just talking about paving the whole length of High Street during the construction, right after that area, there are areas with no curb and no sidewalk. So like putting a bike lane to nowhere, let's put a sidewalk that doesn't lead to another sidewalk. So all the residents are asking, Mr. President, for all this disruption, all this noise, all this inconvenience for the past 2 years is to extend the sidewalk that they're doing from Lorraine Road to Smith Lane to include Wildwood Road to Plaisted Road. Finish it off. Make it a complete sidewalk, complete curbing. Make it so pedestrian safety comes first. It's a small price to pay. They're saying the cost for 220 linear feet is $50,000 from Lorraine Road to Smith. That's double it to $100,000 to go to Plaisted. Even if you have to triple it, Mr. President, to $150,000. That's a small price to pay. And we paid a large price as residents, as inconvenience, as traffic, as debris, as equipment left on the roads. Vibration. We all got the calls when homes started to shake. What do? So I respectfully ask, Mr. President, this contract is still ongoing, and the other part that I just read was an addition to the original MOU that provided for the sidewalk in the rotary. And I would ask, Mr. President, respectfully, and I'm going to offer a motion tonight, on behalf of the residents of Winthrop Street, that we continue the sidewalk and install new sidewalk, curbing, curb ramps along the even side of Winthrop Street from Wildwood Road to Plaisted Road, which continues from Lorraine Road to Smith Lane, Mr. President, in the interest of public safety. We may have some residents that are on tonight, and I would ask if you can indulge them, Mr. President, as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. And again, thank you, Council Marks. Again, another issue that when we reviewed this, to be honest with you, I thought with the discussions that this sidewalk was to go all the way to Plaisted. And I'm again, your due diligence and making sure that we're protecting our residents. I think that we're at a point right now, another concern, as you so eloquently stated, it's going nowhere. So let's give an example. You have Mr. Jones taking Mrs. Jones out on her walk, and she's in a wheelchair. You traverse that area, when you get to that part of the street, it's a huge concern for public safety. And I think that we need to push Eversource in this project, but if we're not going to see that happen, and because we've seen them dig their heels in, I think we really also need to get, for a backup plan, ask the city administration and the city engineer to maybe look into continuing that and seeing if it could be done either in-house or as a cost for the city, because it's inexcusable to keep doing, to not have that to the end of Plaisted and leaving that opening. It's just not safe at all, and it's frightening to think of the possibilities, because the way it was presented, it was really presented as new sidewalks where there were no sidewalks. So to hear that it's stopping there is a disgrace. So I appreciate you bringing this up again, Council Marks, and I will second that resolution.
Thank you. Council Bears.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Councilor Marks and Councilor Scarpelli. I fully support the sidewalk extension, and always think it's important to remember that this public utility made $1.2 billion in profit last year. So I think that they can give back to this community and have more than enough funds to do so. I do have a question for the city engineer if he is still on the call. Is the city engineer still on?
I'm here.
All right. Thank you, Mr. I haven't asked it yet. Question for you, Tim, regarding the timing on this whole project. I know we discussed several weeks ago around trying to accelerate the project, specifically the paving on Mystic Avenue, paving on South Street, these areas that could be repaved. Has there been any progress on making sure that that's done this season? I think, as everyone is well aware, Mystic Ave is a disaster in terms of road condition, and South Street isn't too far behind. So are we moving forward with that?
Yes, thank you, Council Burris. We are moving forward with that. So we have put the request in, as you know, to accelerate the resurfacing of Mystic Avenue and South Street, because those two portions of the project are complete. At least they're ready to be restored. So we don't have a set timing on that yet. In the meantime, so you probably saw maybe some crews out there recently. We're having them repair the trench work that's out there. Even that's starting to get a little old now. So we need to repair that as well. I think everybody understands the conditions of Mystic Avenue. So while, obviously while this project is delaying, Mystic Avenue continues to fall apart. So that is the goal right now, is to have the trenches repaired, and in the meantime, at the end of the year, end of the construction season, have them repave Mystic Avenue, the city's portion of it, and South Street too. So that is the plan.
Thank you.
Councilor Morale.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also want to thank Councilor Mark for bringing this forward and his due diligence. I, like Councilor Scarpelli, I obviously wasn't on the council at the time, but it was my understanding as a resident that the sidewalk would be continued the whole way. So I really appreciate Councilor Marks pointing that out. I think the issue here is too that because of these promises from Eversource, and also I believe there's the project on Winthrop Street, the giant pole, has also, there's been some promise that they will do the sidewalk. Because of this, we're lacking sidewalk in perpetuity. We keep on being told we're not going to handle it as a city because X, Y, Z is going to handle it. And we're going on several years now of a very obvious, dangerous situation that we have no date in sight when this is actually going to be done. And I wish what Council Marks was saying was true. I think it is true sometimes that people do slow down the area. A lot of times they don't. They're also trying to avoid the plates. So you have areas where maybe there's sidewalk, but there's not appropriate curbing, and you have cars that are kind of driving, zigzagging around the plates, and it's just incredibly dangerous. So I really thank Councilor Marks for bringing this up and really staying on this, because this is a major issue in our community, and something that, we've been promised a safety update, that the finish line just keeps on moving, and it's unclear when it's ever going to be made safe for residents. So I fully support the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Morale. Councilor Falco.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also want to thank Councilor Marks for bringing this forward, and thank all my council colleagues for the comments that they've made. I've been on the council now, this is my 6th year, and we have been talking about this project since day one. And the residents of Winthrop Street have had to put up with far too much with regard to this project. This is a public safety issue. This is a quality of life issue. Hearing plates clanging all day as cars are going up and down Winthrop Street, the dirt that Councilor Marks mentioned, this is ridiculous. It's like, this is like the project that will never end. And it needs to end soon. I know at one point in time, I think it was during one of our meetings, probably about a month or 2 months ago, we had Eversource on the line with us, and they had mentioned that at that time, I think there was one crew working. Can the city engineer give us an update as to whether or not that has been increased?
Chair recognizes Tim McGivern. Tim? Hold on.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Thank you. Sorry, Councilor Falco, could you repeat the question one more time?
Last time we met with Eversource, I believe they mentioned that at the time there was one crew working on the project or working on Winthrop Street. And it had something to do with police detail availability. Can you just give us an update as to whether or not that has changed? Are there more crews working on the project?
Sure, absolutely. So yeah, it was not just details. It was the opinion that of the Medford Police Department and the chief that having all the crews strung out on Winthrop Street and the other projects going on in the city, like the High Street project, created a traffic safety problem, public safety problem. So that was really the root of that. However, in light of that, we did schedule meetings every 3 weeks on site to review the field conditions and what was going on. So as of Friday, we have given the green light to a third crew that will be starting at the area of the community gardens, the DCR property, and will be moving north on Winthrop Street. So that's a kind of a crux of the project through that intersection. So they're going to get going on that. So yes, the answer is yes. They're going to be 3 crews on Winthrop Street as of Monday. And I think, when we try to talk about the schedule of this project, it's been difficult without knowing how many crews are active in the city. So, the last look ahead I received from Eversource, showed this work starting next week with all the other crews happening. And, it does kind of have more meat on the bone, so to speak. So, hopefully having this amount of activity will bring the finish line closer. So obviously if the city could let them work 24/7, that would finish, as quick as possible. We can't do that either. So there's a balance, and I think we're getting close to it for the rest of the construction season. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you, Mr. Giver. And I definitely, it's good news that we're having additional crews working on the project. But just going back to the original point, it is a public safety issue. It is a quality of life issue. And if we're going to do it, we should be doing it right. So if we're going to be ripping up the road, then we should be continuing the sidewalk all the way to Plaisted Road. I'm definitely in support of this resolution. I thank Councilor Marks for bringing this forward and move approval. Thank you.
Vice President Nate.
Mr. President, thank you very much. And I thank Councilor Marks for giving us a great history on this project. But I think it's important that we also look back and think about what's been going on in this stretch for the better part of a decade now. We had an underground utility project going on there from the MWRA that went up Winthrop Street. That took about 3 years. And part of that project included some work that went underneath the Winthrop Street Rotary. And when they restored the Rotary, they restored it improperly. So part of the mitigation of this project is actually Eversource fixing the project, fixing the mistake that the MWR made in the restoration. So for 2.5 years, that stretch was under traffic. Was under construction. Then once that project, that underground, that water project finished, what happened was this little project over here, the mini Big Dig, they call it the Craddock Bridge project. 3 years, Mr. President, where all the traffic that was supposed to go over that bridge was detoured up Winthrop Street to Winthrop Street Rotary. I swear, the day the Craddock Bridge project ended, that's when they started this project. This stretch of road has been under construction or under part of a traffic management plan in one way, shape, or form for the better part of 10 years. 10 years, Mr. President. That's not right. That's not right. So this should be a project that should have been completed by now. When they sold us the bill of goods, when we granted the locations, they said it would be completed by now. So I share Councilor Marks' frustration with the process and with what's going on. I also have a question for the city engineer, because it's been brought up that, all our roadways are going to be restored curb to curb, and that we're going to prioritize the curb to curb resurfacing of Mystic Ave. If I understood that correctly, am I correct with that? That Mystic Ave will be resurfaced curb to curb as well? So they say. I just drove down Mystic Ave and it looks like the paint truck exploded, and we have a whole brand new lane painted red all the way down Mystic Ave going southbound into the city. So what's going to happen with that? If the roadway is going to be resurfaced curb to curb and it's going to be restored in kind, I'm confused by this. Is there any coordination going on between these projects at all? I mean, can the city engineer answer that question for me, please, or address that? We just spent an inordinate amount of money that I believe Rep. Barber was able to secure in the state budget for this transportation initiative on Mystic Ave, and they implemented it. But they implemented it without coordinating the resurfacing of the roadway, which is something that I anticipate will happen towards the conclusion of this Eversource project if we don't get our ducks in a row. So I'm hoping the city engineer can speak on that a little bit, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes Tim McGivern.
Thank you. Thank you, Council Knight. So they were coordinated best that they could be coordinated. So the bus lane pilot project, there was a window of opportunity with the grant and the coordination with Somerville. And it is just paint. So when the milling and overlay of Mystic Avenue happens or rebuilds, it will go back to the bus lane if the state thinks that it was a successful pilot project. If they think it was not successful, then it wouldn't go back. It would go back to the way it was. So that's my understanding of it. So they did paint a road that needs to be paved, certainly, but it's a pilot project with paint. So from the infrastructure world, it's seen as acceptable to do that, even though there is an investment there with the paint. But when curb to curb happens on a road like that, and they put it back the way it was, they would put that bus lane back the way it was. Again, if the state decided it was a successful pilot project at that time, and they wanted it back. So hopefully that answers your question.
Well, if the goal is to fast track that stretch, then how are they even going to be able to gauge whether or not the pilot project works? I mean, if we get the green light to fast track that stretch for repaving because that work is done in that roadway, how long are they going to be able to examine the data from this pilot project?
Yeah, I don't know exactly how long it's going to last. I don't have that information in front of me, but I can certainly get it to you. But yeah, the pilot project lasts for a certain amount of time, and they need enough data in order to make a decision. So if the timing of that doesn't work out, then it gets painted back as the pilot project, the way it is, the way you see it today, when the curb to curb is done. So it would just continue. The pilot project would continue at that point. So I was just saying that as a cap. If the state for some reason said, you know what, this is just not working, you guys, Eversource is repaving that road, don't put it back the way it was. But, I don't think that the timing would line up that way.
Yeah, no, I just see it as extremely wasteful that they put the paint down on the road knowing that it's going to be milled and resurfaced. And then who's responsible for restoring it back to the in-kind situation? It will be National Grid, correct?
For that, it would be Eversource. So when we give Eversource a striping plan, it will have the bus lane on it. So it seems like a waste. It does, but it does happen all the time. Paint's ground off and put back. I agree. It is a waste. If we could have done it a better way, we could have. But those are the cards that were dealt to us for this situation. So,
Councilor Morel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just have one question for the city engineer, if I could, through the chair. Does the city, the hope is that Eversource is going to meet the council's and residents' demands about the sidewalk extension, completing it to Playstead. But I'm curious, does the city have a contingency plan or a plan for this sidewalk portion? If that, isn't met, we're talking about one of the busiest thoroughfares in the city that a lot of people are, walking down or trying to move down as well. And I'm curious if there's a city plan to make up that missing sidewalk if these companies don't.
Tim?
Sure. There isn't a plan right now, Councilor Morel. It doesn't exist. We do have the contractor for that 220 feet of sidewalk. We do have them lined up. So if the city administration were to get sort of a renegotiation of that number and extend it to Playstead, that would be the easiest way to do it. It's just unit prices, and we would just extend it down. However, I do want to clarify one thing. The new sidewalk that's going in, the 220 feet that Councilor Marks referred to, is connecting basically a portion of Winthrop Street that has no sidewalk. So it is connecting to a sidewalk. It's a bad sidewalk. It's not in good shape, but it is there. It's a 4-foot wide asphalt sidewalk in poor shape that runs up to, I believe, close to Playstead, if not Playstead. But it doesn't have a curb or anything like that. So I understand that folks wanted extended. I do not know why Winthrop Street was built that way originally and why they didn't put sidewalks on both sides. I don't know why. But if for some reason that can't happen or Eversource refuses or whatever, something doesn't happen with extending it, it would be something that the city would be looking into because it is a connection. And one of the complete streets project on our priority list is the Playstead intersection, I believe. If not, I think it should be. I hope I didn't speak incorrectly on that. Which, if we were to redo that whole intersection and the geometry of it, we would obviously take that into consideration, but that would be multiple years off. So, Hopefully that answers your question for you. Nothing necessarily on the books today.
Okay, yes, it does. Thank you.
Tim, if I can make an observation for you, Tim,
Yeah.
I'll challenge you to go across the Method line into Winchester. And I want you to look at the quality of construction and repair of their roads compared to how our construction is done. When you go by and you see all the, yes, they have the plates down there, but all their plates are all hot down. They're nice and soft, nice and tight, so they don't have the clanging. And when you see the repairs, they're nice and straight and nicely paved. I don't know if it's the same construction company doing that.
It's not.
That's the guy worked. If you know, Tim?
It is not the same company. I have looked at that. The alignments are different. The unfortunate situation, the plates, I don't think are there anymore, but at that stretch of Winthrop Street with the curve and the way the plates lined up, we did ultimately have them asphalt down the plates for the last couple weeks. We did work quite diligently with McCourt, the construction company, engineering division, DPW, even police, to try to figure out ways to reduce the plate noise. The last option was welding them together, but when you weld them together, then you can't actually work under there. So, I'm very grateful that the residents were patient through that whole ordeal. The geometry was part of it. As you noticed, the plates didn't line up. In Winchester, they were able to line up more, and it was a different construction company. So that's Middlesex Construction as opposed to McCourt. I'm not going to, you can see the differences in places, I believe. So, so hopefully.
I mean, shame on whoever bid this contract to let a different city get a higher quality work than we got in Medford. We got the low end contractor. This is the second one because the first one bailed out of the project, and you can tell by the quality work that's been done throughout the city on this entire project for the last 4, 5, 6 years. We should be ashamed of ourselves for letting this happen. We have some people here want to speak in this. Good evening. Name and address for the record.
Giglio, Winthrop Street. Thank you, Council Marks, and the rest of the council for bringing this up consistently. I really appreciate it. I'm right in the middle of this project. Since 2 years ago, when they had the Jersey barriers right in front of my house, I would have to do a 3-point turn just to get out of my driveway. At the time, my son just got his license coming down the street. Now unfortunately, because he was a new driver, he hit that Jersey barriers many times. Now that they're gone, they took the curbing, which I believe I've sent to a lot of you guys, threw it across the street, and it's just thrown there. It's not placed, it's thrown there every which way. Some go this way, some go this way. There's also a black and white cement pole that was dug up previously, and it's just thrown there. It's been there for 2 years now, I want to say. Now that the plates are there, that's all we hear all night is the cling, cling, cling. I have a 5-year-old, major sensory issues. She wakes up all night long. Unfortunately, I sleep okay. She doesn't. And that's, her bedroom's in the front. It's already painted pink. She can't switch with my son. So I want to thank everyone here so much for staying on top of this. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak on this from home? Anyone else want to speak? I don't see anyone. I'm sorry? I don't see anyone with their hand up. Anyone want to speak at home? I see someone out there, iPad in the corner. Mr. Clerk, if you can read, that looks like Mr. Karan. If you can unmute him, please. iPad.
This is Dennis Karen.
Dennis, name and address for the record, please.
It's Dennis Karen, 578 Winthrop Street. Thank you. I would like also to thank Councilor Marks for bringing this to tonight's agenda with such passion. It's not easy to follow someone who's so passionate, much less someone named Socrates. But you all in this very serious and sober discussion tonight, expressing your concern for our situation, make me thankful to be a resident, a 40-year resident. It is a safety issue, as described by Councilor Marks. We have walkers and pedestrians all day long coming and going, including students in the public schools, the parochial schools. The bus stop is up the street here at the next corner for youngsters. There are people with small children who walk up and down I can't call it a sidewalk, I call it an asphalt path. Primitive. They walk their children up and down this path. And I'm concerned because there is no curbing. Drivers from anywhere will pull over to the side of the road to make a phone call. Sometimes they leave their cars overnight. And I can see a car coming up on the sidewalk, which is where they settle for a little while, and encounter one of these unwitting pedestrians. People have fallen. I, for one. And I was very thankful that day that the Medford Police, Medford Fire, ambulance were there in 5 minutes to help me up. So thank you again, all of you. I know some of you have been out here to survey the situation personally. Maybe some of you live in the neighborhood. We do need the sidewalk. We do need the curbing. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Mr. Karen. Marsha Karen, did you want to speak? Mr. Clerk, if you could unmute Marsha Karen, please. Marsha, name and address of the record, please.
Marsha Karen, I also live at 578 Winthrop Street. I want to thank all of you for all of the things that you have listed, and thank Councilor Marks for all of the homework that he has done on this construction project. It has been a great disruption to the neighborhood with the noise level, and one of the previous speakers also noted that all day long we hear clank, clank, clank. In some places we do not, because the workers are working, so they have the orange cones. But as soon as they go home for the day, it starts, and it lightens up around midnight, and then begins again when the traffic comes down Winthrop Street at around 4:30 in the morning. So we've spent many sleepless nights. There's large equipment parked across our driveways so that it makes it difficult for us to get in and out. The police have been extremely helpful with that part of it. We've had the porta potties on our front lawn. It's cracked some of my china. I think one of the neighbors also told me that it has cracked some of their glasses. There are students who walk along this so-called sidewalk. And I actually saw one waiting for the bus, maybe last week or the week before. And he had his backpack all set to go until the workers arrived, and he ran off in the opposite direction of Medford High School. I would guess he was probably about 14 years old. We have a bus stop out in front, but the curbing would also allow not only the sidewalk, but the curbing would allow for illegal parkers. So we really urge you and encourage you to continue with this project and make it complete. The area, I want to address the area between the sidewalk and the street where the trees are planted. So that was at one time grass. It is now dirt where there have been plates placed on top of them so that whatever grass may have been there in some areas, not in all of the areas of that portion of Winthrop Street, it's now just dirt. So I think it does need some attention. We've lived here for over 40 years now, and this project has gone on for a long time. So our frustration level is quite high, as you can imagine. But I want to thank you for taking up this issue, and Councilor Marks, thank you for all of that additional history that you noted in the beginning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marsha. Christina Casano. If you can unmute Christina. Christina.
Thank you so,
name it?
yeah, I can hear, thank you so much. I appreciate all of you coming tonight and hearing all of us on Winthrop Street and hearing our concerns. Can you hear me okay?
Christina, can we have your name and address, please?
Yes,
For record.
Christina Casano, 572 Winthrop Street in Medford. And I'm here with my husband, Robert Casano.
How are you?
So thank you. I'm born and raised in Medford on Billings Ave, and I've lived on Winthrop Street since 2015. Have, really love living here. That said, obviously the project has been really disruptive to us and to everyone around us. We have a 2.5-year-old daughter, and her bedroom is at the front of the house. And, we put on 3 white noise machines in order to keep the noise out while she sleeps. So while I appreciate that work is being done, it's been really difficult to kind of manage with the loud noise from the metal plates and just the construction trucks starting early in the morning. So I really thank you all for bringing this to everyone's attention and hopefully addressing it, because I think adding the sidewalks is a huge safety issue. It would be great to add for all the high school students nearby, all the little kids in the area, all the elderly who are using the sidewalks, the bus stop, everything. And I'll pass it to my husband.
Thank you again, Councilor Marks, for spearheading this issue. It's I've been trying for 5 years now. I've reached out to the mayor's office, engineers, and it's never a promise kept here. It's a little disappointing. I have a pretty good construction background, and it's just hard to see what happens. And I agree with the other councilman about how things are done in Winchester and how things are done in Medford. It's you literally go not even a minute, and you can see the quality of work, how it's less impactful to us. We really like to see as this the project progresses, that there is more coordination. There should be a project manager or someone. If the city has to hire someone, and I heard that earlier in the call where they was promised a project manager, there should be somebody designated. I've talked to Tim many times, and I somewhat understand his frustration because I think he's the only person I can call, but there should be other people handling this type of project. We have multiple projects, not just the curbing. We had the Winthrop development. I guess the one question I have for the council, and I wish, and I hope I can get an answer, would be who's in charge of enforcing this? Well, we can complain as neighbors, but we really don't have a say. Whether we had the Winthrop development, the curbing, the sidewalks, we really don't have a say. We're leading the blind with the neighbors here. Like we can complain all we want, but nobody really does anything for us besides if we complain enough, we just got this meeting. But something like the Winthrop development where they put in 18 houses or whatever they're doing now, we should have been the ones making the decision for our neighbors and our neighborhood, not a developer. And I don't want to go off on a different topic, but that's what happens a lot on this area for us. It's
Mr. President,
Information, Council Scott Belli.
if I could just interrupt you real quick, Mr. Cassell. I think that we need to, I think we've asked this before, that we've called for what has worked as in-person meetings. And I asked to do this at Victory Park and at the high school parking lot with all the neighbors and Eversource when we requested Eversource to come to this meeting. I think that we make that initiative right now as amendment to this resolution, that we call for an immediate meeting with all the neighbors and the Eversource team and the city administration. So I think the neighbors can look the people in the eye that have the answers for this. We've asked to have Eversource pay for a clerk of works, so we make sure all the project gets done. This is something this council has asked for as well. So we share your frustration. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think we have to make that a point and move with that quickly. So thank you. I apologize.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And Dennis knows as well, because we're neighbors. I mean, one side of the street gets plowed, and we get stuck with all the snow, and it's a lot of hard work with all the snow getting pushed on. You look across the street, and you got city little trucks there plowing the sidewalk that nobody owns or the city owns, but it's really disappointing. I've spoken to mayors, I've spoken to the commissioner of DPW, and promises. I like to know personally, doesn't have to be at this meeting, but I wish somebody could tell me who's in charge of enforcing these things, because it's hard. It's really hard to stay at home, pick up the phone, call the mayor's office, and never get an answer. I never get the answer. It's not the answer I want to hear, but at least to hear somebody tell me why Eversource can just drop something on my doorstep and say we're starting construction, and I have no clue about it, and I had no opinion to bring to my neighborhood, and the developer in 5 seconds gets a permit, throws a house down, and I'm stuck here. How did he do that? And I have no impact on my neighbors. I think that's something that it has to happen, especially on Winthrop Street. We are we get impacted so much from the 93 traffic on Winthrop Street. Look what Winchester's doing. How many bump outs they have done from Highland to Winthrop Street. They have done so much to help the sound, the noise, and the traffic. Winthrop Street, we have no ADA compliance. We don't have sidewalks. I mean, literally, we're looking for a lawsuit. And, I wish somebody would step up and really, give the neighbors, the community, an answer. I called the chief of police. I said, why didn't you shut down Winthrop Street? Oh, we're not going to shut Winthrop Street down. Why? Because it would impact traffic. Well, it impacts me. Why do I have to be impacted that way? So it's always Winthrop Street is look what they did on Lawrence Street. They put a big bump out so it would slow traffic down. Why don't we do something on Winthrop Street, traffic control, to slow traffic down? There's a lot of things we can do, and I wish I could be part of that. And I'm never invited, or we at Winthrop Street, we don't hear about these things. We just know when a truck shows up and we can't do anything about it. And I think you should stop Eversource in their tracks and make a deal, negotiate, and then let them start work up again, because they're going to continue just using Winthrop Street, and I'm really tired of it personally. And I thank you again, all you councilmen. I know how hard to hear this, because I know a lot of you live here close by to me, and I really appreciate everyone's time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Casano. Anyone else have any comments? Council Marks.
Just to address Mr. Casano's concerns about who he can go to. As far as I'm concerned with the Eversource project, it should be the city engineer, right? The city engineer should be the contact person. If there is a clerk of the works, that person's name should be given out, but ultimately the buck stops with the city engineer to be the communicator. Additionally, Mr. President, when it comes to plowing, as Mr. Casano mentioned, if they're plowing one way or another, it's helpful information when you get this from residents, because that's how the city should, when they put together their plan of attack when it comes time to snow plowing, how they address it. So this information that Mr. Casano's given is important, and it's vital that we have residents at the table. So he's 1,000% correct. When we have these type of projects going on, the neighborhood and the direct abutters should have the first say in what's happening. And clearly that did not happen during this project. It's after the fact that neighbors are given the leaflets and the door knockers and all that stuff, Mr. President, which is not helpful. They have to be at the table ahead of time. And maybe we can address some of the concerns. But regarding the plowing, again, you probably reached out, but it would be Brian Kerins, the head of DPW, that really should be responsible for making sure that they don't plow just to one side or another, and that they move snow appropriately. So it really should be that, Mr. President. And I would say, ultimately, the buck stops with the mayor. The mayor runs the day-to-day operations of this city. All the department heads report directly to the mayor. So if there's a concern, the mayor should be addressing these concerns, Mr. President. And I'm hoping in a multi-million-dollar project of this magnitude, when we're asking for some just minor mitigation, Mr. President, this is minor stuff to increase the length of sidewalks and curbing, that this would be something that the mayor meet immediately with Eversource to address. So I'm hoping as part of the motion, Mr. President, the clerk would also send that we're requesting the mayor meet immediately to get an answer from Eversource, and they can renegotiate the memorandum of understanding on behalf of the residents of that area.
Making that form of amendment, Mr. Councilor Marks,
Yes, Mr. President.
I would second that.
seconded by Councilor Bears.
I do believe Councilor Scarpelli had offered an amendment as well that wasn't
Yes,
addressed
Councilor Scarpelli did.
for the on-site meeting. I'd be happy to second that.
Tim, if, through the chair, if I could ask you, I recall when this project first started that there were many people vying to be the project manager representing the city. Do we have a project manager on this? That represent, Tim? Do we have, Mr. Clerk, if you can? Tim, do we have a project manager representing the city on this?
So we have a field engineer. So we have someone out there on the daily confirming that they are working to Medford standards and backfilling the trench properly, using the right materials, right methods, things like that. And we get weekly reports, but they're based off the civil work or the utility work, the infrastructure.
So is that his only scope of responsibility, is just making sure they're doing the work?
In doing it correctly, yeah, and reporting back if the issues arise or if there's issues with non-conformance, and we, will attack those and figure out solutions, things like that. So it's not a typical job where the city is tracking payments, for example, where we'd have a clerk of the works. So the primary function of a lot of the city representation on projects is to count things and make sure that the billings are correct for the work that the contractor claims has been completed, payment requests and things like that. So this project is not the city's, so we're not paying for it. It's so they're operating under a couple of different jurisdictions. One of them, as Councilor Marks pointed out, is mine, the street opening permit jurisdiction. And then obviously the chief of police has public safety jurisdiction, and the DPW commissioner has the overall right-of-way jurisdiction. So those are the three entities with jurisdiction in the right-of-way and would be providing enforcement if enforcement is required.
Tim, if I can amend Councilor Scarpelli's, from when we have an on-site meeting, if the project engineer be at that meeting also?
Sure, it's a field engineer from AI engineers who, as you recalled, they were in the competition for this particular contract. So they,
So I'll amend Councilor Scarpelli's motion that when we have this meeting, that the field engineer be required to attend this meeting also. Okay, do we have any further discussion on this? Councilor Marks.
Mr. President, if I can ask Tim, because as he mentioned, he is responsible for the street openings. Mr. Engineer, if the city is not happy with the progress, not happy with the quality of construction, not happy about what's going on in the community, what's our recourse as a community to stop this project?
To stop the project, I believe myself, the commissioner of public works, or the chief of police has the authority to stop the project based off of a violation in one of those jurisdictions. So for me, if they were doing something that was outside of the scope of their permit, then we would issue them a violation and have them remedy it. So that's usually the course we take. If it's egregious or they're not responding to a warning, then, not this particular project, but other projects we have shut down and said, you can't begin work tomorrow until, you have whatever the issue is resolved. This project, I believe, I'm not sure if shutting it down would be the right move necessarily, if we want them to be complete with the work. But I'm not sure if that answers your question.
I'm not asking that it be shut down. I'm asking to find out
Okay.
what the process is, if it's a cease and desist order, or what the actual steps are, because in my opinion, in dealing with utility companies on this council for the last 20 years, that's what they understand, is when you play hardball, in my opinion. And I think if the city takes a laissez-faire approach to this and, just let things proceed as usual, then they're never going to take us serious. So I think at some point, when we raise our concerns, and I'm hoping this comes from the administration about the sidewalk, that they take us serious, Mr. President. They're not going to want to come back to the table and renegotiate an MOU. But guess what? If we hold their feet to the fire right now, I think we'll have that leverage to do so. And we experienced the same thing on Riverside Ave. Another utility digging up, we were talking about having sidewalks that were level with the street. So even though there was curbing, the street was done over so many times that it was as high as the curb to the sidewalk, therefore creating an insecure pedestrian pathway. And we got the same feedback from the MWRA and National Grid. Oh, it's not part of the scope of the project. Oh, we can't afford it. We can't do this. We can't do that, Mr. President. We have to hold their feet to the fire. And if it's a cease and desist order and having them stop, it's going to hit them in the pocket. That's what they understand. And maybe that's what we need to do. That doesn't worry me about a potential lawsuit or whatever else it might be. The residents come first. And I think we're at a point with this project that we need to reshape the work in this project and make sure we're leading and not following behind this. So I appreciate Councilor Scarpelli bringing that up. I hope the mayor's on the phone tomorrow morning. We see a lot of press releases, but I hope we get a press release that matters, a press release that comes out and says we're doing something positive that impacts residents, Mr. President. I hope we see something positive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Marks. Justice, you have your hand up. Mr. Clerk, can you present? Good evening, sir. Name and address on the record, please.
Joanna Quiteri Mejia, 35 Early Ave. And actually, Councilor Marks just said everything I was going to say to the residents, especially. They do have recourse. They could play hardball, get themselves a lawyer. They have a right to live peacefully. And there should be a projected end date on the project. Thank you.
Thank you, there. Any further questions?
Mr. President.
Good evening. Name and address on the record, please.
Orlando, 13 Winford Way. I didn't come down here to speak about this, but as I listen, I appreciate everything that's being said. We know the safety issues, the quality of life issues, and so on. But we're really now, we're in behind the curve. At the beginning, the horse is out of the barn. Were there any performance metrics put on with this contract before it started? Was in terms of completion dates, lack of completion dates, fines on a weekly basis, the quality of life issue, beyond the repaving of the streets? That should be a given. But why isn't the city imposing on such contractors? You are affecting the quality of life in our city for 3, 4, 5 years, and in some cases 10, I'm hearing. Why isn't a condition placed that that contractor, that developer, that utility will pay the city X amount of dollars in addition to the road corrections, $2 million, to deal with the lack of performance, to deal with the loss of quality of life? Those things should be negotiated on any contract. I've been involved with programs, both private and public, and dealing with what we're dealing with now after the fact, you have little to no leverage. What I just heard the Councilor Marks say, what can we do? Cease and desist. These are difficult things to do after the fact. Why? I guess the lesson is learn from this. The next big contract that comes in the city, sit down and play hardball before the first shovel goes in the ground. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Okay. So on the motion by Councilor Marks as amended by Council Marks twice, as amended by Councilor Scarpelli, as amended by Councilor Caraviallo. Did I miss it?
I'd like to offer an amendment as well.
And as amended by Councilor Knight.
As I go through my paperwork here, Mr. President, I have a document dated April 30th, 2015, the Mystic to Woburn Transmission Project. I have a document here, the Mystic to Woburn 115 kilovolt line project, Medford City Council presentation dated May 19th, 2015. I have the same document dated October 20th, 2015. Another presentation, November 14th, 2017. And another presentation, Mr. President, February 4th, 2020. I think it's time we bring them back for another presentation as to what's going on. Let's get everybody in the same room here as well as on site, so that everybody that has something to say can participate and can express their concerns, Mr. President. So I'd like to offer that in the form of a motion, that just as they have previously, Eversource appeared before the council. Last time they were here was February 4th, 2020.
So Councilor Knight is in the form of a motion. Mr. Clerk, did you get Councilor Knight's? Do we have a second on Councilor Knight's motion? Second by Councilor Falcon Cancel. Okay, so on the main paper, offered by Councilor Marks as amended. Yeah. Offered by Councilor Marks, seconded by.
Second. Mr. President,
Councilor Marks.
just if we could, I just want to follow up. Rick Orlando hit the nail on the head, because he's absolutely right. After the fact, it's increasingly difficult to try to get any type of mitigation or any agreements. And we should have some form of metrics. He's 1,000% right. And he was part of the building of the new schools, and I know that's where a lot of the metrics came from. And, Mr. President, when you sit down and negotiate, and you're looking at a project of this magnitude and the impact of the community, and look at a few items of sidewalks and a Winthrop Circle being done over, and the mitigation was next to nothing on this project. And he's absolutely right. You should have a contingency and say, we're going to put $2 million in a fund that if we're not happy with the outcome of this project, we can take money to do additional sidewalks, signage, marking streets, whatever it might be. We don't even know what damage is being caused to personal property, a neighbor's wall, or the cracks in their ceilings, and so forth. And I know there's other insurance binders for that, but he's 1,000% right. I hope moving forward, Mr. President, the city engineer's on the call, that we do have some type of listing when it comes to metrics and a checkoff. We don't have to recreate the wheel. A checkoff. Do we do this? Do we do that? Do we do this? And that way, at least we know when we're working through a project that we did our homework. Because right now, when I look at the memorandum of understanding, it says nothing. It's 2 paragraphs. It really says nothing. I mean, whoever negotiated that, don't ever have them negotiate on my behalf, because the city got nothing, Mr. President, on this project. And the residents, which comprise of this community, got nothing in return. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Mr.
Mr. President,
Councilor Bates.
I just had a quick question. Councilor Marks, what's the date on that MOU?
Give me 1 second.
Thank you.
14, 15.
So the date I have for this, this was a response back. This date is March 9, 2017.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I'm Bob Penta, 0 Summit Road, Medford, Mass. Rick just jogged my mind. The city has in its Department of Public Works, anytime a street is opened by a public utility, there is a bond that they have to place. I believe it's gone from $5,000 to $10,000. I think what really needs to be checked, if you want to get into this review, as Rick suggested, and he's absolutely right, have those bonds been taken out? Is the city sitting on any kind of money in its legal department or the Department of Public Works? Because one of the big complaints before, when the streets were being dug up by utilities, they weren't being put back in the way they were or made better than what they were. And many streets are like that in the city. National Grid's coming in, they've done that on numerous occasions. So as a result of that, I think it's something that you probably should look into. Have they filed anything by way of a bond with the city as it relates to this? And more importantly, when you talk about the residents not getting their fair share out of this whole thing, Council Marks is right. Because if in that agreement, in that purchase and whatever you want to call it, that agreement between the city and Eversource. It keeps going on. And as we know, and I'll ask Council Knight, Vice President Knight, if you look at all those additions that they've had since 2015, I guarantee you that the personnel that started this aren't the same personnel that's there right now. And if that's the case, that's where the city is losing out. So that's why you need it hard and fast right up front when the contract is signed. Once again, what are they putting up? Are they putting up $1 million or $2 million? Whatever the contingency might be, but you have it right now. You have it already built into the Department of Public Works. When a public utility comes into the city, they have to place a bond. And if they don't place the bond, they don't get their money back as it relates to the work that they've done. And there has to be what they call a performance bond. And that's the term, a performance bond. And if that's not in the contract, and they are digging up the street, and Eversource is in fact the utility, then shame on the city. But if you do have it, then maybe that $10,000 ought to be increased to $1 million or $2 million because of the magnitude and the scope of the project. So thank you, Rick Orlando. You jogged my memory.
On that point, Mr. President, I also think it's.
Vice President Knight.
I also think it's important to take a look and see if we're contributing, the decision of the administration are contributing to delays by not allowing more crews out on the roadways and not taking some steps to address it dynamically. I mean, obviously, we know that this project's been a disaster. It's been going on for the better part of 5 years. So, you know, the MOU says what it says, but it might be time to go back to the table and really look at what's going on and try to figure out if this traffic management plan's the best and what we can do to get additional crews out there. I always find it interesting when a resolution makes its way onto the agenda and then someone from the administration comes and says, actually, on Monday, we have 3 crews out there working now. And that's going to be the first day it happens. It seems kind of reactionary. You know, and I don't blame the city engineer for this. I know that there's a lot going on and that he only has limited control over certain aspects of this project. But with that being said, Mr. President, you know, is city decision-making contributing? Or lack of city decision-making contributing to the ongoing delays as well? And I think that's important to consider.
Thank you, Vice President Knight. So, on the original motion offered by Council Marks, as I think, who seconded it? I missed the second. I think Council Scott Pelley seconded. As amended, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Council Bears,
Yes.
Council Falco,
Yes.
Vice President Knight,
Yes.
Council Marks,
Yes.
Council Morel,
Yes.
Council Scarpelli,
Yes.
President Carviallo.
Yes, 7 to 3, motion passes. On the motion by Vice President Knight, seconded by Councilor Bears. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll on that one.
Which one?
On Councilor Knight's, Vice President Knight's made a motion.
I thought it was an amendment.
Okay. I know you said, I thought you wanted to be a motion. All right. Okay. All right, so we'll keep it in. All right, thank you, everybody. All right. 2-1-384, offered by Vice President Knight. Whereas pursuant to Governor Baker's lifting of the COVID-19
Mr.
restriction.
President, before you go through this, I will be withdrawing this paper this evening. The governor has extended the special parklet outdoor dining regulations. Massachusetts Restaurant Association had worked with the governor's office to extend certain provisions of the emergency order that were lifted. This is one of them. So with that being said, the purpose and intent of this resolution has been addressed, and there's no need for further discussion.
So,
Withdrawn.
Councilor Knight has withdrawn his motion. 2-1-385, offered by Council Marks. Whereas in response to a recent resolution regarding request by this council that the administration ask Waste Management to clean residents' barrels, the administration answered that Waste Management is unable to provide this service to residents. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the administration identify and procure a vendor to provide the service on the residents' behalf. Councilor Marks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I offered this resolution several weeks back on behalf of the residents of this community that would like to see their recycle and their trash barrel power washed, Mr. President. We then asked Waste Management if they provide the service. The city came back last week and stated they do not provide, Waste Management does not provide that type of service. So last week I was unable, because it wasn't on the agenda, to ask that the city administration hire a private contractor to come in during trash pickup and alert residents that barrels will be washed right after their trash is picked up, Mr. President, power washed in the interest of public safety, in the interest of rodent concerns, Mr. President, when you have lingering food and other smells coming from a barrel. And I would ask that the city administration immediately hire a private contractor to provide that service on behalf of the residents of this community.
Thank you, Council Marks. On the motion by Council Marks, seconded by Council Scarpelli. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Council Bears.
Yes.
Council Falco.
Yes.
Vice President Knight.
Vice President Knight.
I'm thinking, Mr. President. Yes.
Council Marks.
Yes.
Council Morel.
Yes.
Council Scarpelli. President Carviallo.
Yes, 7 in the affirmative, motion passed. Offered by Councilor Bears and Councilor Moreau, be it resolved that Member City Council, that the city administration address the issue of senior center parking as part of any implementation of parking policy and enforcement changes. Councilor Bears.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think as everyone behind this rail and across the city knows, the senior center has very limited parking immediately adjacent to it. And prior to the implementation of Park Medford, seniors would use the city parking lot across the street without incident, whether they're going on a trip or leaving their car there or going just to the senior center to do the activities and spend time at the senior center. Once Park Medford came in, that lot became restricted. A kiosk went in. Initially, there were no additional parking spots for the senior center at all. I believe the mitigation that was made was that there are certain, I think 20 or so permits that the senior center has that allows seniors to park in that lot for about 3 hours. But that hasn't been enough, quite frankly, for the senior center. If residents are going on a day trip, 8-10 hours, the 3-hour limit there is insufficient. They've tried to find some other alternatives, but people are constantly worried that they'll be ticketed or towed. And one of the things that did not make it into the enforcement report, as far as I could tell, was what would happen with senior center parking as these policies and enforcement and policies are changed. So the request here is that the administration, as it implements any parking changes, makes sure that the senior center has sufficient parking for a sufficient amount of time for seniors to adequately use the center for all of the various activities that they use. There are several suggestions that could work. One of them, I believe I've heard many of my fellow councilors mention before, is that there should be a senior parking permit citywide, that seniors should be exempt or have a special permit that exempts them from the kiosks and those various charges. Another option would be to change the rules specifically on that lot to expand the amount of time that seniors can park there. I think there's a lot of ways that this could be addressed, but it's a serious issue for seniors, for the staff at the senior center, and for folks who use that space. And I just hope, and that's why I filed this along with Councilor Morel, that the city administration will make sure that this is finally worked out so all of our residents can access the senior center, park there, and do the various activities and services that they use the senior center for. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Bears. And for the record, President Caraviallo has a senior citizen parking pass that I know many senior citizens in the community have. So that allows them to park there. I got tired of paying the $25 tickets and say, as soon as I turned 65, I got my pass right away. Councilor Morel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank Councilor Bears for introducing this with me. He hit on really all the key points, but I want to add that the timing of this is, in addition to being time for, the hopeful implementation or looking at parking policy and enforcement changes from the report, is just the anticipation of pandemic restrictions ending. And this is a cohort of residents that have, really been harmed by the inability to kind of gather and have that community that the senior center provides. So it would just be, it's really needed timing to have this hammered out and figured out by the time our seniors are returning and able to meet in person once more. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Morel.
Mr. President, if I may, is there a time limit on your permit? Like you can only
It's 1 year.
just in terms of how long you can stay in a specific spot?
It's whatever. I don't know. I haven't gotten a ticket since I've gotten it.
All right, thank you.
Vice President Knight.
Mr. President, thank you very much. I'd answer the councilor's question. For all 2-hour parking spots, you're allowed 3 hours. You get an extra hour at every, at whatever the spot says. In terms of if it's a 1-hour spot, you get 2 hours. If it's a 2-hour, you get 3 hours, according to the police department website. But I wonder, Mr. President, if there's a way that we could implement a mechanism where an individual, if they get a ticket, there's an automatic mechanism. If it's someone that's over the age of 65, upon payment of the ticket, they're also given an application to apply for the senior citizen parking pass. So say an individual that's over the age of 65, like yourself, got a parking ticket, say down out in front of a place, maybe, I don't know if you've been there, Magnificent Muffins, and you got a ticket out in front of Magnificent Muffin, when you paid the ticket, then they'd have an automatic mechanism to say, Richard Carviello paid this ticket, he's a Medford resident, we know what his registration says. Can we send him an application in the mail that says you're eligible for the 65 plus parking program? Here's the application. They have no problem sending out late notices when people don't pay, Mr. President. I think that, in an effort to address some of the issues like Councilor Scarpelli brought up with the Amnesty Day and stuff like that, this might be a way for us to get in front of some of these issues that are arising with Park Medford, number one. Number two, it seems to me like Park Medford's out the door. We did get a correspondence from the administration relatively recently indicating that their contract was up relatively soon and that the administration is having meetings of some sort to discuss the future of parking in the city. I understand that we did have a committee put together to do some examination. I felt the presentation was a little bit focused more so on the Green Line extension sites and a little bit less on citywide efforts and endeavors. But with that being said, Mr. President, I certainly think that an automatic mechanism that notifies seniors that they're available and that they're eligible for this type of service, this type of amenity that the city can provide would be very helpful to the residents in the community. So I'd like to offer that in the form of a motion as to whether or not Park Medford can determine if there is a way that they can offer extend applications to residents in the community that are 65 years or older when they pay a ticket that they receive, Mr. President.
Thank you. I know the senior center does have passes that they do give out to, because we do have a lot of residents, a lot of people that go there that don't live in Medford, and they do give them passes to put on their car. They bring them back. So I don't know how many they have, but I know that is a service officer Bears.
Yeah, and along those lines, I appreciate the additional information. I think the issue is it's a 2-hour spot, so you can stay for 3 hours. There's only, I think, 20, I believe 22 is the number. I might be wrong, but there's more passes out than there are spots. So it's kind of one of those situations where if additional spots could be signed for this, and if they could be signed to be, you can park there all day, that would address a lot of the issues that I've been hearing. So that's the intent here.
Mr. President.
Councilor Marks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank my colleagues for putting this on. And let me tell you, over the years, the seniors have received a lot of lip service. Just recently, Mr. President, in the last mayoral debate in this community, it was stated by one of the candidates that seniors would get free parking. Free parking, Mr. President. And that could be accomplished very simple. Anyone that has a car registered that's of senior age, Mr. President, would get a senior sticker. Right now, you have to pay $25 for the sticker. That doesn't sound free to me, Mr. President. So there's been a lot of promises made. And, when the time comes, a lot of, things promised, but then never followed through. I would ask, Mr. President, where is the senior free parking? What happened to the senior free parking program? I think that's a valid question to ask, Mr. President. Thank you.
Is that a form of amendment?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, so as amended by Councilor Marks. Any further discussion? So on the motion by Councilor Bears, seconded by Councilor Morell, as amended by Councilor Marks.
And Councilor Knight.
And by Vice President Knight.
And by Vice President Knight.
And Mr. President.
Yes.
Secondly, the Board of Health Director we haven't seen in 2 weeks.
She did notify me that she would not be able to, she had a prior commitment.
And that's great, but we haven't seen her in 2 weeks. We have a big announcement from the mayor coming out in a week or so regarding the opening up of the city. We have the governor coming out with his opening, and we haven't seen the Board of Health to give us all, including the community, an update, Mr. President. So I would ask that we receive an update. I would also ask that we receive an update when the senior center is going to open. As you heard from my colleagues, the seniors rely on talking to other seniors, getting their information, socializing, Mr. President. And there've been 14, 15 months without being able to socialize. And it's about time we get our seniors back in the senior center. And for those seniors that can't get out there, let's offer them the service that's provided by Mystic Elders service to allow the seniors that aren't mobile to get them there as well, Mr. President. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. President, on Councilor Marx's point, I think it's also important to point out that the administration had recently asked the council to fund a position called the COVID-19 Communication Specialist. So I don't see any reason why if Ms. O'Connor is not available, that this other city employee that works in the press office can't appear before the council and provide us with the update. Thank you, Councilor Marx, for bringing it up.
Thank you. So Mr. President, just to follow up, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but you hear all the different dates. May 29th, you can take your mask off. June 15th is the date that the governor said that you can start meeting without having a mask on. Then are you allowed to go in stores, or individual private owners of stores allowed to keep you out if you don't have your mask? There's a lot of questions, Mr. President, that this is the time we should be hearing from the city, and they're nowhere to be found.
I would think that would be the job of the new hire.
I don't know whose job it is, Mr. President, but, you know, someone has to do it.
Councilman Falco.
And, you know, Councilor Marks actually struck upon an important point. If she's not going to be here to give us an update, and no one's going to be sent from the department to give us an update, we should get some sort of a written update as to what's going on, if there are any changes that are happening, what are the vital metrics that, you know, that we should know, because we're being asked all the time. And we should be informed by the administration if Mary Ann can't come to a meeting. So if you could please communicate that to her in her department, that if they can't send someone, at least send us some sort of a written update.
Mr. Clerk, can you put that into the record?
On that point, Mr. President, because I do believe this council voted, and we said, you know, we'd appreciate you coming and give us an update, but we also want it in writing. And the reason we want it in writing is so we can keep a record of what's going on, so we can have a snapshot in time. So we don't have to go back and watch a meeting from 2 years ago about the Eversource construction pipeline per se, when we have paperwork that they gave us on it. So I concur with Councilor Falco 100%. You know, we have a very well-funded communications office, and we should be getting communications.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you. If you read, we got this put on our desk tonight. It says programs will start in June. We are not physically open to the public yet, but we are beginning some activities by appointment only. So again, I think I asked for a plan 3 weeks ago on opening the senior center up, and I never received a response on that. So again, this is the lifeline for the seniors in this community. And I tell you, I don't, anytime I'm out shopping or anywhere, first question I see a senior is, when is the senior center going to open? When are we getting back? And like Council Marks said, we're hearing rules from everybody, and we don't know whose rule is what anymore. And Council Marks.
We have the Memorial Day ceremony that's going to take place at the Oak Grove Cemetery.
Yes.
That's been a tradition for 100 years in this community.
Yes.
And we're going to actually, last year, we were unable to meet due to COVID. We just got a response that we're going to have an in-person.
Yes.
And as part of the letter, it stated, this is going to be on May 31st, correct?
Correct.
As part of the letter, it stated that you have to wear a mask. These are the inconsistencies.
I thought I heard that because it was outside, masks weren't going to be required.
The letter I read said you have to wear a mask at this event from the city administration. That's what I read in the letter. And that's fine if that's what they want to do. But these are the inconsistencies that I think we need some type of direction on, Mr. President, not just for our benefit, for the residents of this community.
No, I agree.
Mr. President.
Council Bears.
And I just want to add, I definitely agree with my colleagues that we should be getting the weekly written updates that we requested, especially if Board of Health staff can't be in attendance at the meeting. I would just add that the order that's being released on May 29th, it says if you are fully vaccinated, there are situations where you no longer have to wear a mask. There are other situations where it's still recommended. And I also believe that the city health department and Board of Health can, you know, still implement other regulations. So I completely agree with all my colleagues that we need that information, because right now we don't have it and we're saying, what is the rule here in Medford? But I just wanted to put that out there. And there is information on the mass.gov website around the governor's order if folks who are watching want to learn more. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Mr. President, if I could, all along in this community, we've been following the governor's order and we've been following the CDC, right? And we've been heard that our Board of Health is bound by the governor's order and the CDC. Now the governor is saying that you can go outside without a mask. The CDC is saying the same thing, but the city has yet to come out and say why we have to wear a mask or why we don't have to wear a mask. Are they no longer following? Now they're coming up with their own rules and regulations. These are the questions that we need answered, Mr. President. The school committee's coming back June 7th. I heard last night at their meeting. They're going to come back in person on June 7th. And, you know, there was one particular member of the school committee that spent more time figuring out how you're going to throw residents out of the meeting that aren't wearing a mask than deciding what the rules and regulations are and social distancing and so forth. But they're more concerned about throwing people out of meetings, Mr. President. So, you know, I don't know what direction we're going in, but we need direction from this city administration.
Thank you, Councilman Marks.
Mr. President,
President Knight.
I think it's also very important when we look at, you know, not only the seniors in our community, not only the administration of government, but, you know, what families rely on in the summertime. You know, the recreation department, participation limits surrounding summer fun camp, Wrights Pond, Tufts Pool, the recreational programs that are offered through the rec department. They're all right now limited because of the participation limits, Mr. President. So if you wanted to sign your kid up for the Saturday morning basketball league, it's $145 for 5 weeks. You get 45 minutes a week, and it's limited to 6 kids. We have a community of 60,000 people. If you wanted to have your kid play in the recreation department's basketball program, it's limited to 6 kids. It's less than 1% of the population.
Point of information.
Council Scarpelli.
Maybe to enlighten you, the recreation has now lifted all of the limitations. Any participants outdoors for recreation programming, the instructors and the kids do not need to wear a mask. If they're indoor recreational activities, they still have to wear a mask and still keep the social distancing. But it's they've lifted almost everything dealing with recreation. So I hope, and Mr. Bailey's usually on this, so hopefully he can start increasing those, Council Vice President.
So when you say
It is important.
when you say their counselor, you're referring to the governor,
The governor,
not the
correct,
city administration.
correct, right. The
Because
governor-
when I recently checked the recreation website, the participation limits were still at six people per event.
Right, that's why we need these
Right,
these
we need
updates. some clarification to
Right.
help our department heads as well. So thank you for that. Sorry.
Council Falco.
I think that the main point is clarification, because it seems like there are definitely some inconsistencies from what we're hearing here. So if we could please, actually form, I guess, a motion or amendment that we have Mary Ann specifically state to us in writing if there are any inconsistencies that the city is, if the city has different rules than what are being implied by the state.
Did you get it?
No, I did not.
Council Falco, can you repeat that for the clerk, please?
I would like to know I'd like to know if the city's rules regarding COVID are different from what the state guidelines are. So are the city's guidelines different from the state's guidelines with regard to COVID? Thank you.
So on the motion by Council Bears, Council Morel, as amended by Council Marks, and amended by Council Falco. Did I miss any amendment?
Council Knight.
And Council Knight. Seconded by Council Morel. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Council Bears.
Yes.
Council Falco.
Yes.
Vice President Knight.
Yes.
Council Marks. Yes. Council Morel.
Yes.
Council Scarpelli. Yes. President Caraviallo.
Yes, I'm in the front of the motion passes. Reports of committees. 21372, May 18, 2021. Committee of the Whole report. This committee on the whole was held to discuss an open meeting law violation. The city solicitor has drafted a response and returned it to the Attorney General's office for further action. So on the motion by,
Move approval.
on the motion by Council Bears, seconded by Council Scarpelli. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Council Bears.
Yes.
Council Falco.
Yes.
Vice President Knight. Council Marks. Council Morel.
Yes.
Council Scarpelli. President Carviallo.
Yes, 7 in the affirmative, motion passes. 20355, May 19, 2021. Committee of the Whole was held to discuss budget actions that are allowed by the council as with the guidance from the Department of Local Services. Move approval. Motion by Vice President Knight, seconded by Council Marks.
Mr. President, I'm aware that you met recently with the city administration. Can
I
you
did.
just give us an update on where we stand with the budget?
Yes, we're hoping to get the budget on our packet on May 4th.
June.
I'm sorry, June 4th. And the mayor will come to the meeting on June 8th to make a formal presentation. And hopefully we'll start meeting the following day on a Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday to get the process started. Provided we get the budget on May 4th. June 4th.
Thank you for your leadership, Mr. President.
Okay, on the motion. Did we already vote on that? We didn't vote on that. Vice President Knight, seconded by Council Scott by Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Council Bears.
Yes.
Council Falco.
Yes.
Vice President Knight. Council Marks.
Yes.
Council Morel.
Yes.
Council Scarpelli. President Carviallo.
Yes, 7 in the affirmative, motion passes. Public participation. Would anyone like to speak in public participation? Good evening. Name and address of the record, please.
Rosalie DeLucia, 30 Walcott Street. I almost left, but I came because after watching last week's meeting, I am totally overwhelmed as to what is happening with this city. Why in heaven's name are we exhausting our money and time on changing the name of the Columbus School? It makes no sense. And as Rick Orlando says, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Why are we going to put our money into this when we should be putting it into the education of our children? I mean, changing the name to me is like you're trying to change history. And I have spoken to many of my neighbors in the community, inside and out. My daughter went to the Columbus School. There's nothing wrong. Put the money into educating the children. Forget changing the name. It makes no sense. You're causing a war in this city. It's awful. It's awful. I don't know who started this or for what purpose. I know when I went to school, there was nothing wrong with Christopher Columbus. He discovered America. He was a good man. He's a hero. We celebrate Columbus Day. Now all of a sudden he's a bad man. Listen, that was back in the 1400s. We're in the year 2021. Enough is enough. And we really need to move on from this topic. Leave the name alone. So I don't know if that's the school committee or.
That is a school committee issue.
Well, I'm here because of what happened
But this
last week.
is the forum where you're able to express your opinion.
Well, my opinion is it really needs to stop because it's just causing a war in the city. We've got a divided city right now. We've never had that, and I really don't think that's what you want. So.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you very much. Okay. Anything else? Any other public participation? Okay. Records. Records of May 18, 2021. Passed to Councilor Scarpelli. Councilor Scarpelli, how did you find those records?
Second.
On the motion by Councilor Scarpelli, seconded by Councilor Bears. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Council Bears.
Yes.
Council Falco.
Yes.
Vice President Knight. Council Marks. Council Morel.
Yes.
Council Scarpelli. President Carviallo.
Yes, motion passes. Before we adjourn, I did issue a summer schedule going forward, and the summer meeting schedule will be July 13th, August 17th, in September 14th. September 14th, may have to be rescheduled in the event there is because that is election day. In the event that there is a primary, that date will be rescheduled to the 21st. So at the moment, we'll keep it that way, and let something change. So, motion to adjourn. The motion by Vice President Knight, second by Council Scarpelli. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Council Bears.
Yes.
Council Falco.
Yes.
Vice President Knight. Council Marks. Council Morrell.
Yes.
Council Scarpelli. President Caraviallo.
Yes, 7 in the affirmative, motion passes.